Welcome to Talking New York Real Estate with Vince Rocco. Our show is all about the exciting world of real estate and in particular, how it relates to the luxury New York marketplace. But if you are not planning a real estate transaction in New York, we still have plenty of information you can use no matter where you are. Now, here's our show. Hello everyone, I'm Vince Rocco in New York, so let's get right to what everyone is talking about. Today on the show, lately, here in New York City real estate, it has been buzzing with transformative shifts across the board. A major hot topic in is the new broker fee rule, requiring landlords, not tenants, to cover agent commissions, which has sparked immediate rent increases in many listings. On the sales side, co-ops are regaining popularity due to their relative affordability, while the luxury condo market faces slower demand and increased incentives. Sustainability is also driving interest with energy-efficient, all-electric, and smart buildings attracting eco-conscious buyers. Meanwhile, tight inventory continues to fuel competition, particularly among first-time homebuyers. Overlaying all of this are key policy changes from congestion pricing and Local Law 97 to renew tax credits that are reshaping investment strategies and influencing how residents and businesses engage with our city. Additionally, the implementation of NAR's buyer-broker agreement requirement is making waves, again, prompting agents to have upfront conversations about representation and compensation, adding a new layer of transparency and formality to the home buying process. And on set with me here today are Michael Holt from Compass and Louise Phillips Forbes from Brown Harris Stevens, and they join me now to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate. So let's go behind the headlines and inside real estate, the state of our industry.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back to the show and welcome. This is going to be a good one. There are people out there this week, last week, recently that are saying New York City real estate seems to be in crisis. Now, we can define crisis in so many ways. I don't believe that's true, but there are so many people who are saying that because, you know, inventory's down, buyer activity's been down, we have new rental laws. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about the new rental market and the broker fee law change, the sales market and the trends that have been emerging lately. Low inventory. We are still struggling with low inventory and buyer behavior. What is the behavior about today? And let's not forget back in January when the National Association of Realtors lawsuit hit January 13th, and now we have to have buyer-broker agreements. We'll get into a little bit of that. We've already done a show on it, but in the overall conversation of New York City in real estate crisis, we have to touch on it. Michael, let me start with you. So under the rental market and broker fee thing, how has the new broker fee impacted the rental pricing across our neighborhoods? Everybody was saying all of last week that rental prices would be going up because now landlords have to pay a fee.
Very true. Well, first of all, thank you. Always a pleasure being on the show.
Pleasure is mine.
Excited. Super. Also, first show with Louise. I like to call her Wheezy over here.
Wheezy. Yes, well, that's our Wheezy. Okay, that's a feat. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's the best.
That she is.
So to answer your question, I mean, that consensus is right. I mean, I will say it's a little bit early to tell, right? There's going to be this knee-jerking effect. Summer's also the hottest season, pun intended, but no, really for rentals, it really is. And, you know, I looked at some charts and it was saying that the prices overall were up about 12% already. However, we have to see how this plays out over the long term. But the general consensus is, well, if the landlord has to pay their broker when traditionally the tenants would pay, just because, you know, supply and demand, especially the rental market, rents keep soaring at all-time highs and vacancy rates are low. And so that demand is just really strong. And so landlords can afford to tack that onto the rent even higher now.
You know, I've said for years, you know, I don't do a lot of rentals. I do more sales. But on the rental side, I've always said for years, you know, that I understand that the hesitancy in tenants not wanting to pay 15% of the annual, or we got to a point for a while where it was 1 month and 1 month, 1 month to the listing agent, 1 month to the buyer agent. And now all this change where literally a tenant can run around and go and look for any apartment and not have to worry about paying a thing because, as Michael said, the landlord is going to be paying the listing agent. But Louise, let me ask you something. Are tenants really, really saving in the long run?
Absolutely not.
Or are they not?
No, it costs the consumer more money, absolutely. And I will also share that in my experience, since this took place, nobody's negotiating. Not one. I mean, we have done like 5 significant, and 15,000, 29,000. I think we're in the process of doing 8,400, which historically I've been managing that piece of property for almost 15 years. And it's the highest we've ever gotten for it, even in a peak market. So I think it's an interesting psychology for the tenant, number one. Number two, it's eliminated co-broking. So that is an interesting, I think, unintentional consequence of that law. And again, I think often you have to remember that the inventory that's happening in the rentals has been underway of a lack of inventory for 2 things. Number one, in 2019, when the Fair Act for conversions took place, and the landlords couldn't get for every $1 you put into your renovations, you get a 20% increase in your rent for the rent stabilizing rent control. That's no longer the truth. So landlords are holding 150,000, probably 150,000 apartments that are not, they are not going to put tenants in them, rent stabilized with no ability to improve the asset and get the increase over time.
Yeah, it needs to be more of a strategic and collaborative approach. I mean, tenants feel like they're getting a win, but they're really getting screwed because even credit works in a very similar example. It's like, well, I can finance this, I can pay throughout time, but you're paying interest and all these things. But what's interesting is so many people, how many tenants, really move after the first year and all those expenses and things like that. So they're renewing leases, staying put longer, and rents just keep going up. Whereas the landlords, their rent rolls are going higher now. They get rid of their concessions and their balance sheets look better. But it is also, like you pointed out, is very much more complicated for tenant reps. For brokers, that how they make their living. It's much harder. There's less negotiating now. So
yeah.
But I fear, though, because Louise touched on it before, that co-broking on the rental side is almost going to be non-existent. So if you are an agent out there here in New York City running around with renters, you're pretty much out of business because renters are smart and they're going to go directly to, the apps that will show them where the listings are, call the listing agent and make an appointment, paying nothing in the end.
Listen, for myself and again, my book of business is a very different book of business than a lot of people. But, again, let's not forget we're here to be of service. And if we can't provide them a service because we're not being allowed to, I'm literally just like, here's 6 landlords, call their on-site person, and when you're ready to buy, I'm here. And again, it's a business decision that you make that I would rather extend a hand, support, and execute successfully because to me, that's much more, good faith is sometimes much more valuable. Same with working with another broker and saying, I just lost my client for this, this, and this, and then be generous, give them what you can give them and share with them in your advice because that's more valuable sometimes than the transaction.
Absolutely. You have to pay it forward. I always the same thing, specialize in sales. And I would say, listen, I'd rather just not charge you. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to look. Here's what you need to do. And you're ready to buy. I'm here. But absolutely, that was before this narrative has changed.
Yeah.
So.
But, I read last week, I haven't caught up with it this week, where StreetEasy, our premier listing system app out there that most buyers and consumers use, good or bad. Unfortunately. But here's the thing. I read that a lot of, I think it was up to 25%, my last read, of rental listings have dropped off the StreetEasy application. And I'm sitting back thinking, why?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to talk about the idea that now I am going to my owners. I'm also having my owners pay that StreetEasy fee. Because I also believe that the consumer's ultimately going to pay for it.
But if you're a listing rental agent, you're going to have to pay that fee anyway, and the landlord's going to still pay you. So it's not like they're paying more money.
I understand that, but I'm baking all that into the rent, the new rent. So it's, some people say that it's up 8%, some people say it's 11.
Right.
It is absolutely 1 month fee. And I mean, in one case, I actually had, in the middle of the exchange of the law, I had the tenant paying a 15% lease. We had it signed. We had to addend it. We had to modify the lease and raise the rent so that my owner could pay my half of the 15%.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just one incident because we were not approved in the waiver package.
I mean, I closed a very large rental deal just 2 weeks, I think, before the law changed. So from that perspective, and we collected 15% of the annual blah, blah. But I have to tell you something, going forward, I mean, I recently received 2 rental referrals. And when I spoke to them and asked if they were willing to pay a fee, and they said no, because the law says they don't have to any longer. So I said, thank you, but I can't work with you.
Yes,
I'm not going to work.
But I also,
but I don't want to do that because it is a referral or times 2. And look, you never know what's going to happen. But are we going to work for free? No.
Well, the only other option on that front is the opportunity of having conversations with the listings that you actually are managing.
That's different, right?
And the business decision. Listen, I don't know. Because I manage property that usually I've sold to them, it never would occur to me to charge a landlord 15% of a year's lease.
Right.
And so those conversations are really important to have in this. But my experience in the last 10 days is truthfully, we have more activity and more applications and more execution than I've seen in the last 45 days.
How does marketing
for other listings?
Michael, how does marketing either improve or not improve with listings out there today if you're a listing agent and or a landlord? I mean, what is a landlord doing potentially because I'm also hearing stories where the landlord's not even wanting to pay an agent anymore. They're going to do it themselves. Well, we all know where that's going to land. Nowhere.
Well,
so what kind of marketing is out there for this?
As far as a landlord and
a listing agent.
Well, what's interesting, just to kind of rewind, when you're talking about the listing inventory on StreetEasy, for example, this also affects open listings.
Correct.
Open listings as well. And so the business model for being a tenant rep is certainly is changing. And so, but as far as marketing goes, landlords, they've always cared about finding qualified tenants. Obviously, if they're qualified and tenants that are going to take care of the apartment as much as they can, but they also like minimal vacancy, tenants that are looking for longer term leases. And so I think it's just a matter of having these conversations and figuring out like, okay, we have to gear our marketing towards, because in the end, everybody's prices are going to rise. They're still going to have the same competition as they did months ago, right?
And just to be clear, my 2-year leases, I am automatically giving an increase for the second year. Nobody gets a free pass anymore. It's like, and instead of being 3%, I'm actually pushing for 5%. Because I do think that the lack of inventory, the scarcity, the 150,000 warehoused apartments that are rent stabilized, that landlords are waiting for a regime change and a policy change. Because we all know that interest rates and policies affect real estate on all courses.
It does.
It's interesting because before all of this happened and before the talk said, the talk speak was, well, rents are going to increase. We have seen in the last 2 years almost pretty regularly and steadily rents going up and going up.
Remember,
historical high rents.
How many people have you worked with or you in the last 18 since 2022, or when the increase in the interest rate?
Correct.
How many have they said we're going to wait another year? And in fact, my counsel to them is this is when the prices are so suppressed that when the interest rates drop, the prices go up, the buying power shifts. So this is where I've found that if you can get somebody to shift their lens and the way they think about things, because it's counterintuitive, that's how I've shifted people. But a lot of people have moved into renting, which has also affected the vacancy.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me how
Remained in renting.
remain, right. Or, yeah, stick it out versus, leaving it and buy something. And I talk to people all the time. They say, well, you know what? As Weezy just said, well, I think another year, I'll stick it out, whatever. I know I'm going to get an increase, and I know that increase is going to be high, and rents in general are high, but I still can't afford the monthlies because and we'll talk about it after the break, sales, but the monthlies are really what people are focusing on these days because they have become very high. But at the end of the day, they're taking on rentals that are very high. And I don't know that there's any relief there. And how long or how much can you continue to renew your lease without sitting back thinking, well, I still need to save money if I want to buy a property here in New York. And if I'm paying all this money in rent, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Not only that, I mean, I have a client on Central Park West who is a very dear friend, and we got a magnificent Park View, 1,600 square foot, 2-bedroom in one of Rudin's buildings. And they paid I want to say 10 when it used to be 16 or 17.
I was going to say 10 is not bad for that.
And that made sense. And it made sense. And now today, and again, from multi-generational real estate families, the Rudins, the kids have taken over that business. And they just, they are wanting to have a firm handle. And there are people that have been in the building for 30 years that they are now well, your $12,000 rent is $18,000.
Yeah.
And they have the right to do that. And so, and remember, if you have an $18,000 rental, you have to make $36,000
a month
to pay that. So it's
sadly, there are many people in this town who can afford that. I mean, in a good way.
No,
but,
it is just they are at the bottom line is they're not any better on affordable living in New York with the circumstance of this.
Right.
Not even close. Yeah.
And the policymakers it is just so frustrating that they're not boots on the ground people that understand the cause and effect of the laws and the policies. Look, it's more paperwork for us. We can manage the paperwork. It's just annoying. And then we're at the mercy of management companies to respond and process things.
Absolutely. Michael, before we change gears to sales, where do we go with this from the rental perspective? Do you see another change down the pike somewhere? Do you see this law potentially, because we're still technically fighting it? But as I say all the time, once you give something to someone, like you don't have to pay me, you're never going to be able to go back to that. Agreement, that is.
I don't know about that.
I'm hopeful, but I don't know. Go ahead.
I just think that in the end, what it boils down to, the policymakers are trying to increase the quality of life and increase the access and ability for people to live in Manhattan. And like you said, when there's a lot of warehoused apartments and rent-stabilized apartments that are not only not being rented, but they're not being upgraded because the landlord now has no incentive
no motivation to do that.
That is not how you want people
very
to
key.
live.
I also would just say that one of the things that I was sort of processing and thinking a little bit about it is pushing some people into buying.
Yes.
And it's why one of the things that we'll also hear about is that the condo philosophy, which there's a giant diverse change in those two markets. It's why there is this resurgence in the co-op market right now, because you can enter in for an average $800,000 one bedroom, whereas the cost of that carry for a rental sometimes is $5,000 a month, and it's going to cost them after taxes, $4,700.
Absolutely.
So there might be, for the few for the ones that can afford it, an opportunity to pivot, but not everybody has that choice.
All right, listen, we're going to take a break. Everyone's coming right back. We have so much more to go as Talking New York Real Estate is just getting underway this morning on a very hot 100-degree temperature day here in New York City. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, we are back. So, Louise, you touched on it just before the break, how co-ops, and I mentioned this at the top of the show, have found some kind of renewed interest, and there are a whole bunch of reasons for it, speculation. Give us a little bit of a breakdown as to why all of a sudden we see a bump up in co-op activity over condo activity in our sales market.
I think I mean, when you have the privilege of marketing a development project simultaneously with a bunch of resale business, I've been handling 393 West End Avenue, and we lost many deals when you were looking for a 3-bedroom and you're paying between $3.3 and $5 million. There are a lot of co-ops that can be had from that same 3-bedroom square footage. Might need work, but you can accomplish that between 2.2 to 3.5. So you see a big ratio differential in the condo and co-op market, which didn't always exist. It used to only be about 15%.
That's very true. But the elephant in the room there is you might find a good price, you might find a lower price, comparatively speaking, but we have to get past that monster, which is the co-op board approval. And we all know that, we can go for that lower price. And your point is well taken. And you've certainly done this long enough to understand, but that approval process can be excruciating, and not everybody can make it past.
Absolutely. Well, I decided probably about 15 or 18 years ago. I mean, I got into the business flipping tenant rights for new conversions.
Correct.
So I really understood the infrastructure of co-ops quite well. And if you can't beat them, you join them. So for me, I started consulting. I would sell people apartments in a co-op, and the board process would be a nightmare. And I'm like, you're on the board. Can I sit and talk to your board? Can I join your Zoom? So I'm consulting. I've probably done 50 buildings where even if you look at 1100 Park Avenue, used to be an all-cash building. It is no longer, because it took me 3 years to get the board to get out of their way. And so you have to partner with who you place in those places.
I totally agree with that. And I had the luxury of talking to a board just recently as well on the Upper West Side. And hopefully my points got across as well. Michael, your thoughts on this, though, because the co-op market is less expensive for most people out there. And I always say on the show, whenever I'm starting out with a new buyer, regardless of the price point, the listings I get sent to me, in the middle of the night from all these apps are co-ops, because they look at the price, they don't realize it's a co-op, they don't understand what it is necessarily, but the price differential is significant, and I want it.
Right.
What's your thoughts on this?
Well, just to rewind, when rent pressures start to really become burdensome and they just get to a level to where you're like, man, I'm not building any equity here, and the prices keep going up and my options are becoming less now. My landlords, my God, I wish I would have taken that built-in 5% increase, because now the rent's even higher.
Yeah.
So basically it becomes a point in time where when New York is home, and they're not, being in a transient, they're not here for just a year or whatever it is for work. And New York is home, and they have the means to start looking to buy, or at least the thoughts of doing so. That's when a lot of times I get calls, because he deals with first-time buyers as well. And I'm saying, look, I was just browsing online and I saw that I came across some apartments. What is a co-op? And my goodness gracious, I noticed it's a difference from a condo, but it's so much better pricing. And so now they think to themselves okay, well, at least I'm building equity here. At least I have some ability to also capture appreciation growth, and especially right now, because right now the market has been suppressed in New York City. Prices we didn't have the bull run everybody else did during the COVID times in Florida and all those things. So now people are looking at prices, and I'm also educating hey, look, this is where these values used to trade in the past at better markets. You're getting a pretty good deal today.
Right.
So I think that's really encouraging for some to look to buy, and starting with co-op.
And getting through the board process, there are a lot of people that don't have the assets. So it's so can I gift it and buy it, and they don't have enough money on the income. So then you start consulting on let me get on a call with your parents. Let's co-purchase this. And you can do a separate agreement where you have a partnership, and then you can forgive that partnership as you evolve in your career. So there are opportunities that you need to coach the family.
The workaround is important, and the workaround is a lot more work, but you're right. If you need to do that, it can work.
Listen, when I bought my first apartment, I literally had $2,500 post closing.
Right.
$2,500.
I had a little bit more than that, but not much.
And literally my dad was like, wait a minute, you're buying a place and then you have to pay monthly? I don't
Yes.
understand.
Nobody does.
But
especially in New York, yeah.
anyway,
Nobody does,
he
right.
was nice enough to put my name on an account, which, by the way, it was just like it was a double account
Yeah.
that was mailed to my apartment, and it had no trace of my dad. So it looked like I had like $180,000 post closing, and I was super
Yay,
happy
Dad.
about that.
Yay, Dad.
And you know, I mean, he thought he was not being honorable because I was like, let's just agree to not discuss this.
Exactly. We don't need to talk about it.
But you know, there are ways to beat the system, and when you have billboards that don't want gifting, don't want guaranteeing, don't want co-purchasing. It's like, are you really trying to box yourself out? And those are the co-ops that their prices are suppressed
Yep.
Right.
and depressed.
100%. Michael, you know, I've noticed, and I'm sure you all have as well, you know, over the last year or so, 2 years actually, the maintenance increases in both co-ops and condos have been, in a lot of cases, double digit. So when we talk about monthly, when we talk about, you know, buyers first time or not, looking at, should I continue to rent? Should I buy? Or as a, you know, first time buyer, wow, you know, the interest rate is double now. Maintenance has gone up double digits. How on earth? And by the way, you know, it's interesting how in this business things, you know, are cyclical. I don't hear too much pushback anymore lately about purchase price.
Nope.
I really don't. Now, everybody would love to see purchase prices coming down. What I'm hearing more about now is, but Vince, look at the maintenance. But Vince, if I get a mortgage on X amount, my interest is gonna be X amount, and wow, I can't afford that. I'm a first-time buyer. Double-digit increases in the condo arena and co-op arena. What is going on
Well, first of all, I mean,
post-COVID?
Maintenance is always going to go up, or let's just, if we can separate them for a second, you got your building charges, your common charges, if you will, and taxes. And taxes are always going to go up because the land costs and all that all continues to rise, but usually at a pretty, you know, set amount. But also, when it comes to running buildings, you have the operations of the buildings and the salaries to pay, which have to increase, especially with inflation. And so costs just always naturally go up. However, any good landlord would tell you this, is that how's the efficiency rate of my building? And what's super interesting, I'd love to get your take on this as well, but the whole efficiency grading for buildings as well, and having, you know, if you're not up to a certain level of efficiency now with your building, you're going to incur a lot of fines. And they've pushed back these things a lot. I have some clients that are like, what's the building grade? Are they doing anything yet? Because they're either going to have to continue to eat these costs, or they can invest into making the building more efficient, which will eventually also lower your monthly carrying costs. But that is also going to be only so much, and it's going to cost you money, which could also be assessments. So, you know, understanding these things,
Assessments, that's another thing.
Yes, but they're surely important, because if something is, it's like you have to compare apples to apples. If I know that, you know, this apartment has $3,000 a month in common charges and $2,000 a month in taxes, whatever it is, I know that all in, like, this apartment has to be comparable in what I'm getting versus the other building next door. If those monthly carrying costs are much higher, there's got to be some adjustment in price. But there's still only going to be so much, because someone's not going to go and pay $50,000 a month or whatever it is.
There are some of those out there.
There are some of them.
But yeah. Let's just talk about, like, this is why more and more we're going to see condominiums that are taking mortgages out to do a 10-year improvement program. So to borrow the money, to have the assessment.
That's a good
By
point.
the way, that assessment, so I sold this guy an apartment for $2.8 million, and he has a $60,000 12 or 15-year assessment. That's his cost basis. So it's all how you choose to look at it. And it's all how, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you still have to pay for it. You still have to, but the cost basis of that $2.8 million apartment, which, by the way, today is 3.2, because we didn't have the surge of COVID, but we have the growth quietly in the market. And, you know, I think this is why having the education of a professional to help guide you how to adjust your thinking about these things. Because at the end of the day, everybody has to deal with this efficiency. And every day we have to make the world a little bit better and do our part. And so I have a 10-room apartment. My maintenance is $8,000, which kind of freaks me out. And however, it's 56% deductible. If the salt changes, which that's sort of some of the political arena might allow, it was great when I had $90,000 with real estate taxes and interest deductibility. Now I'm down to 10 only. That kind of isn't good. But
yeah, you said
That's a problem.
something though that really it just is so profound to me, because I honestly believe that all of these things, between the stuff that's going on with the tenants, the FAIR Act, the things that are going on with the new buyer broker agreements, and now the changes with the building codes and all of these things, it just says, and private exclusives. I mean, the climate has changed so much. The world has changed so much for the brokerage community, but it really just shows just how important it is to have a professional that's educated that can explain things to you, which is why I believe that it's so important just to be able to talk and consult with a real estate agent. It's a free consultation too. I mean, when you speak to an attorney about
That's
law,
a very, very good point.
go to
You're
a
right.
doctor for a checkup, like you should absolutely be speaking with a real estate agent so you at least understand what your options are. I mean, it's foolish not to understand at least what your options are, because
But it's human nature for people to just charge out there on their white horse thinking, I have all the answers, I know everything, when what you just said is 1,000% correct. We are the experts. We kind of dig in to the background of all of the noise and understand and able to communicate effectively.
and apply
Right.
it to the individual, especially if you have a relationship with them.
Well, that's-
I mean,
yeah.
you know,
Yes.
in my own building, I can share with this person.
Right.
My insurance went up 38% 2 years in a row
course.
for my building.
Oh, God.
Which sounds crazy
Well,
to me.
again,
I
that's-
just lost my insurance in Montauk. You know, so there's a lot of pressure, and you have to sift through the noise quietly and methodically, because what's right for one person is not always right for another.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Louise, talk to us a little bit about how the developers today in the luxury condominium market are dealing with the current environment. You know,
Well, they're really happy right now. Let's be clear.
well,
Because
tell us why.
they're happy right now because there's not enough inventory, and
Right.
and that there was
And that
a
unsold
time-
inventory needs to go.
And there was a time where we don't have markets collapse in New York. If you look back to September 11th, you look back to Lehman collapsing, you look back to whatever was going on with the interest rates and the inflation, we don't have collapse, or COVID even. Our markets don't collapse, they pause. So they pause for 6 months, 8 months, waiting for the shoe to drop. People are swarming in looking for the bottom feeders, but we have a bit of an adjustment, and this is when the sponsors had to lean into city and state transfer, mansion tax, all these things that in 2020, end of 2022, and
Sponsor
through-
being the developer, by the way.
yes, correct. That they needed to. They really needed to compensate
Yeah.
and meet the buyers where they
Yeah,
were,
absolutely.
because there were a lot of choices.
Yeah.
Today, there are not so many choices. So I'm in a position, I have 4 units left at 393 West End Avenue.
Wow.
I'm about to list the penthouse for $15,900, and you know, I'm just not going to have to negotiate. So that is a product of timing and weathering a storm.
Michael, talk to us a little bit about the outlook for foreign investment here in New York City. We all know
They're coming back.
even before, they're coming back, but slowly, but before COVID, I mean, the foreign investment was incredible. You know, kind of slowed down, and to the point where it was almost non-existent. And Louise, you know from new developments, in my tenure in new developments for 17, 18 years, a lot of my buyers were from foreign lands because they like to buy brand new. They like the tall, big, beautiful, glassy buildings. Where are we today with foreign buyers and buying here in New York?
So, this point actually I'll make is also fits the narrative Wheezy was saying as well. As I always say that the pendulum swings, right? And so and in real estate you have your buyer markets and seller markets and things that are in between, and it takes a little bit longer versus where the stock market, you get a whiff of news and it just goes nuts overnight. And it's a lot of volatility. But in real estate, you have a lot more things. And if you're educated enough, you can make some pretty good bets. And I say bets because every now and then you'll have these, new policies that are changed. But usually you can see those coming too. It's the black swan events like 9/11 and some crazy things that you have to experience where in Florida was the hurricanes and stuff, where sometimes it's like, oh, wow, it kind of like adjust a little bit. But that's what you were saying, Louise. Or you have to be able to adjust. But what's interesting is now, pending sales from last year overall are up 25% in Manhattan, and in a luxury market, which is 5 million and up, is about 40%. In fact, the luxury market is having such a little bull run that it hasn't been this high since 2021, and before that, not until 2015.
About 15.
And so your developers have to be happy about that.
I mean, at the end of the day, here's the reality of it is that, real estate's always been cyclical. It used to be 15-year cycles, then it tightened to 10 and then 7. And we are such a global market that buyers and sellers have short memories. And
everybody
Yes, they
does.
do.
Actually. Everybody does.
And even in terrible markets, they want to sell and buy in that market. In high markets, they want to sell and buy. So it's really understanding that, owning that piece of rock, and this is about as safe of real estate investment you can make.
Michael, you and your team also deal with Florida buying and selling and stuff. So, when you're talking about foreign buyers, and when I'm teaching continuing ed, and we talk about the class I teach is helping foreign buyers, blah, 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 whatever. Are you seeing more activity in Florida than here?
I got to take
That's
this
very
class.
articulate.
It's news to me. I got to take
Yeah, you learn about blah, blah, blah in that class.
Oh, yeah. This would be
So do you
great.
find, more foreign activity in Florida, the Florida market, than you do here, or is it about equal?
Well, here's the thing. Florida market is, I think last time when we were on the show, we were talking about this and just how much the pendulum's swinging now the other direction is big buyer's market. However, the luxury market's doing it's still holding on over there. Because I was just speaking with a journalist at Forbes about this, and we were talking about also with one of the developers in a big project out in Miami, and he's like, wow, he's like, your units are starting at $7 million. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I do a luxury product. He goes, I had a building where your car would be brought up in an elevator and you have it in your apartment. But these are they have branded residences.
What a luxury, right?
But the thing is the mentality of the luxury buyer. It could be part of their portfolio or collection, or it's just a very different narrative in how they view the long term. But investors also have a different mentality, including foreign investors and buyers, and it could be different incentives into why they're coming to Florida or New York. And honestly, New York is always the place of in my opinion, the place to be, which is why cap rates have always been historically lower here, because it's more of a stable and secure environment for investors.
It's a placeholder for a lot
Placeholders, when you have unstable markets.
The growth in the asset itself. I mean, my sons are 21 and 19, and they just bought their first multifamily.
Oh, wow.
And it's really kind of cool.
That's exciting.
And in their opinion and the research that they did, they looked all across Detroit, Nashville, North Carolina, and they ended up in the tri-states. They're in Connecticut, but it was sort of research based. But the long play is the growth in the asset.
That's it. But here's the interesting thing now. Also, I'm just talking about a timing perspective, but the timing since Trump took office to now, the dollar is down 10%. And when you look how strong the euro is, like we've got clients in Germany now, they're looking like crazy. They want to buy. This is the time. And they're like, well, I don't have to actually move, Michael, for actually another 3 years. But we know where the rental market is. We know where the dollar exchange rate is. And we know where values are because I've educated them. They want to buy now and rent it. And they're moved until 3 years.
Absolutely. 19 and 21. I'm sorry. I can't even get over that fact. I knew her
I know.
before she was even married.
That's why I was like, wow. I was like, that's incredible. That's great.
I know.
And with a mom like Wheezy, why wouldn't they invest in real estate, right? I mean, come on. All right, we got to take a quick break. Michael and Louise are not going anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Don't go anywhere.
This podcast is supported by the More Network, powered by Brown Harris Stevens. Real estate touches every aspect of our lives, from design and architecture to investing and the economy. Now there's a way to get all your real estate information in one place. The More Network. With more than 20 podcast and webcast series, the Mastery of Real Estate Network is powered by Brown Harris Stevens, one of the country's most distinguished brokerages. Discover advice from notable entrepreneurs, compelling topics, and access to top global real estate experts. Subscribe to their YouTube and Apple podcast channels by visiting getmorenetwork.com.
We're back, and we're going to talk about low inventory and actually buyer behavior, okay? Because we all, chalk up everything. Buyer's market, seller's behavior, buyer's behavior. With inventory so tight, okay, how can buyers position themselves to win in a multiple offer situation these days in this current market?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's not new information.
Right.
I think it's positioning yourself. I mean, like I just had 3 multiple bid situations, and we ended up taking the cash deal, and I had an unusual product that I have not seen in decades, which was a holdover from First Republic Bank when it was bought. It's an assumable mortgage at 2.85% that saves about $54,000 a year to somebody who purchased it. And ultimately, the person who won that bid was the cash bid, not the assumable person. But the point for what I was really trying to talk about was really working closely, if it's my listing, with the brokers and helping them understand what's important to my owner. And that collaboration must happen. And if you're working with, honestly, people are like, love direct buyers. Like, I would rather have a professional like Michael coaching them than me having to try to earn their trust when I represent the seller. So,
good point.
Possession, I think what's the most important thing is it's the preparation of finding the right home. Queue up the attorney, queuing up your mortgage. If you don't need a mortgage, I have people that are actually margining their account so they can be cash because they want the tax benefit to take the mortgage out afterwards. So all of that needs to happen so that when you are in the right place at the right time, you can execute.
$1 million question, and I wish I had the answer to this. When does inventory ease up a little bit? When do we get more of it? Will that happen?
Political change.
Will that happen between now and the end of the year?
Summer slowdown is here, so generally you don't see as much inventory. But I would say
I miss the days when I'm out with a buyer and I can show 10 apartments and a car service in one day. Now I'm lucky if I can show 2.
I showed 85 apartments last week with 3 different buyers, and all 3 of them bought. So,
well, that's not bad odds.
No, but I'm just saying it's like you need to lean into it because it's really about understanding the market now. And if you don't find what you want, then we wait patiently for the right thing. But I don't think we're going to have a summer slowdown.
Oh,
for
no,
better or worse.
But what I mean by that also is that you generally have that narrative in the marketplace, right? But for sellers, though, it's like for sellers, I feel like, and it's also led to the reason to why we're at now with inventory levels. Like I'm speaking to a couple of them now to at least, consider like even as a private exclusive. But that's the thing is, demand is there. The demand is there, and I think it's stronger.
You mentioned private exclusives. Just tell me, why is that beneficial to your sellers?
Okay, so I will
give me the Robert shtick.
Excuse me. Oh no.
No offense, Robert.
Here we go.
It's really annoying.
I'll speak to this on my personal experiences.
Personal experience, and then your ethical experience. Go ahead.
Oh, I gladly, But so here's the thing.
Michael's on the spot.
I know you haven't eaten yet, so I want to get you while I can.
I know. I thought I felt dizzy before. No, I'm kidding. In the hot seat with Wheezy, baby. Oh my gosh, look out.
We love you, Michael. Go ahead.
No. So here's the thing. When it comes to a seller, depending on their situation, right? It could be a timing thing, could be a pricing thing. I have listed some unique product where this was before spring. And during the winter, as you know, is some of the lower, it's not the best time to list. Spring is the best.
Is that your narrative, or is that?
Well, spring is historically generally.
I did
doesn't mean deals,
$80 million in January, February, March.
Yes. Doesn't mean that deals won't happen.
On the market, by the way.
Right. But
we're going to talk about off market in a minute. But
doesn't mean deals won't happen in the winter, of course. But here's the thing. Historically speaking, there's way more transactions happening in spring and supply and demand. And so anyways, but what happened was specifically though, besides like the strategic time of listing in spring, my sellers just simply weren't ready yet, but they were okay to have pictures. They had very unique product. I give them a pricing strategy, but they want to test the market. They want broker feedback, and we have excellent relationships with brokers as yourself to be able to call and say, hey, look, I know a lot of the brokers in the area that bring a lot of buyers that looking for a similar product as yours. We have our own buyers. I would like some professional photos and like a general listing page where I can send and get legitimate feedback. And if we had almost 12, we had almost 12 showings in a week from that property. And we're like, wow, okay, this has been received very well. And what we ended up doing is we ended up launching at that price, and we got 3 offers and sold it within 30 days, which is a huge, important metric to be able to have a contract within 30 days, as you know, for the right price. I know the luxury market different.
But people often wonder how, if it's off market, if it's private listing, whatever it is, how do people out there, the consumer out there, or other agents out there know it exists to generate interest, to when you finally do decide on a number and get it out there to market? How do people know about it?
Well, here's the thing. When it's in that private exclusive stage, the main purpose of this is not to have a pocket listing and do a direct deal. No, it's for broker feedback, and it's also to show your seller, because you'll have some stubborn sellers that won't agree with you, and you've been, my God, what you say is gold, especially Weezy, right?
Absolutely.
But you're going to have some pushback eventually, and to be able to show them like, hey, look, we only had a couple brokers come through here. I invited all of these brokers, and maybe they did come through, and they're like, hey, listen, I know it's a very unique product, but I think it's priced a little bit high, and they give you this feedback, and you don't have any offers or things like that. I mean, my goal isn't so I can send it to a direct buyer or do a deal off market. My goal is to get helpful feedback. So when we do launch, I want to launch it. I want as many eyeballs and traffic. I want the best odds possible of bringing the best qualified buyer or multiple offers. And I can get that when I have my biggest splash within 30 days, knowing I'm priced and marketed right. And especially if it correlates with the right season, that's a bonus. But if I'm able to generate awareness and feedback from great brokers like yourself, when I go to launch this, it's going to be perceived pretty well. That's the purpose in my experience of why you do this. And then also, what it encourages? It encourages more collaboration amongst brokers and relationship and talking. Think about before computers were even around and before the MLS was around, how did people find anything?
3-ring binders mailed to you. I know.
But it was so important to have relationships with your brokerage community. And as a buyer, you went straight to a broker like, okay, who's doing the business here? So I think, honestly, it puts the power back into the brokerage community, because you want to know, hey, what am I not seeing on StreetEasy or Zillow? Like, what else is out there? Inventory is so tight. Is there something out there? Can you show me what's off market?
Right.
That's why I think
and there seems to be so much more of that. Every time I turn around, I'm getting an email from, broker colleague, whatever, off market. And again, my only concern with that is that it's fine, but my only concern is, how do people other than us know about it? And sometimes we don't until the last minute. But let's move on. So under policy and regulation shifts, we're talking about, and believe me, this is one of my biggest hot buttons these days. There are both sides to the issue. I'm on my side and I'm sticking to it. How might congestion pricing affect real estate and real estate transactions and values here in our city of New York? As I call it, my town. Congestion pricing.
I mean, I wish it made a difference on the traffic, for God's sake. I kind of...
Well, that's my hot button. Okay.
I literally was like, when this first happened, I'm thinking, $500 million for the city. This is
I'm so good. Against it.
This is good in principle. $500 million for the city. It's going to cost me
everything is good in principle, my friend.
$3,000 a year to come to work. Yes, I can take the subway, but my actual office is my car. And so if I'm going to have that luxury, I'm happy to participate. That's just me personally. I haven't thought about it from the cause and effect of purchasers. so much because
Probably more out-of-town purchasers coming in here with that stigma already of, well, it cost me so much money to get into New York City. Now I'm considering buying in New York City. Does that make sense?
yeah, I don't think that congestion tax is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's just my personal opinion.
Fair enough.
I agree.
You agree?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I bring it up only because it has been brought up many times in a lot of reading I do, in prep for the show. But to Louise's point, I agree. Traffic. Has it really helped traffic? No, it has not in any neighborhood. And it all the write-up that I read, even last night before the show, everybody's carrying on about how wonderful traffic is in New York City. I'm like, what city are you talking about?
Where are you living?
Yeah, where are you living?
Yeah.
Really? What's so wonderful about it? Nothing.
Yeah, I think that people will make business decisions around 4% unincorporated business tax. I'm just doing a deal with a guy at Fortress, and he's going to keep his house in New Jersey, keep his primary residence there. He's going to have this as a second home. And then he'll figure out what he's going to do. He's his son's finishing his high school year and starting another son in the city. So he'll kind of commute in between. But that 4% was the motivating factor, not the congestion tax.
Okay.
Because he's the reason we have the congestion tax. He's coming in from New Jersey. But he's not driving, just to be clear.
All I know is I live in New York City, and I'll get off the soapbox in a minute. I live in New York City, and when I take a cab from downtown to home, I have to get hit with congestion pricing. I'm not coming from out of the city into the city, but yet I still have to pay it. Why?
When I take my car out of the parking lot, I have to take it because I'm on 61st.
Love my city bikes.
I was just going to say.
Right.
By the way,
100%.
that's
City
gotten
bike.
very expensive.
Yes, it has.
Yes,
it's
it
up
has.
100%. They're doing all these
It's up
things to
100%. Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. They're
It's
not,
pay to
not the
play,
cost,
babe.
ridership. It's up
Ridership,
100%.
yeah. Oh, of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about in this current market, in this buyer's market, I'll use the term buyer's market, are buyers today here in New York City putting any focus at all on green features or energy efficient buildings or anything to do with that here in New York as they may be in the suburbs when they're building houses and et cetera? Is it a big deal here in New York? Smart homes,
I'm
all
going
of the
to
above.
answer one thing about that in principle. I think that the developers that are focusing on it are getting compensated for it. They're elevated in the branding.
Yeah.
I just brought a listing on the market at 1 Sherman Square, which has got this incredible renovation. And it's a multi-generational real estate family who purchased. There are a lot of people in real estate that own in that building. She redid the building is, by the way, working on their efficiency stuff, and they have a 10-year program, and they are an incredibly well-run building, and they are upgrading the electrical panels. Well, she already did it, so she doesn't, and they have a bulk rate of $2,200 or $2,500 to replace all of those, and that's part of the efficiency rating. And she did her. She has these voice activated where your lights can go on, your shades will go up. I was on the phone with her, and she was in the Hamptons. She was like, "Oh, you have an appointment in 30 minutes. I just turned the AC on," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you." So I think that the bells and whistles are appreciated by probably a little more sophisticated gal than myself, because I don't mind pulling my shades up.
I mean, I consider my smart home, I have a computer, I have my devices, I flip the switch, the light goes on. To me, that's a smart home, so I could appreciate it too.
Her refrigerator opens and closes through voice activation.
Oh, whatever.
I mean, it's just like all these very cool things. I mean, I came down this morning.
Where would we be without it?
I came down this morning, and my son had left the refrigerator open, and my yogurt was all like 90 degrees.
Oh, dear.
So that would have been useful.
Whatever happened to the clap, the little
There you go.
It all started from there.
I mean, all right, moving on. So
to answer that question,
Go ahead.
I think that the developers are when they pay that premium for that LED qualification, the leads, and all of those bells and whistles, it makes more sense to do it from the ground up than to try to do it from the inside out.
100%.
Individually.
100%. Michael, so how are we talked about the National Association of Realtors and broker agreements and that lawsuit that was lost in the Midwest last year. MLS users took effect here January 13th here in New York City because some of the firms here in New York City do use MLS in the suburbs, whatever. How are agents in New York City preparing for these new agreements? Is it being effective, or are they utilizing it, or what's happening? Your opinion.
Well, I mean, it's being utilized, and now it has been.
It's implemented.
It's implemented. We have no choice.
I was going to say it's implemented. It's underway. So, but I just think that it's formalities have just changed a little bit, to be honest, because you don't have to sign an exclusive agreement with me right away and locked in and boom. Technically you do.
Well,
not exclusive. But it could be.
You could sign something disclosing that's not exclusive.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just wouldn't even be my style anyway.
Right, but
true.
But there's your style is very different from other agents. Not everyone has their own style, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So some of the agents, especially those that are not, I mean, it's very different too, and as far as like how you're meeting the buyer, right? But a lot of the times the buyers are just like, it's hard if they don't know you. It's like, hey, well, listen, I just want to see this apartment, or I was just info gathering right now. I'm not sure, I want to get to know you first. I want to know that you're knowledgeable, amazing. Yes, it's date before we get married. And so that's what it is. I mean, you can do things from showing agreement. Hey, this is just for this property, or you could have an agreement to where you stipulate the commission, and this is the agreement sets that you're getting paid for only this property. So there's 3 different types of agreements. There's different things. It doesn't have to be just this exclusive. You're locked in for a certain amount of
Here's
time.
what I say to this. I mean, because the NAR agreement basically says that, sellers now have the option of paying both listing agent and buyer's agent. They have to pay the listing agent, but not necessarily the buyer's agent. And I've had a couple of conversations where it didn't go so well. So then now we have buyer-broker agreements. So as Michael indicated before, if you're showing a property and there is no commission to the buyer's agent, we ask our buyers to sign an agreement to pay us themselves. So I'm going to ask a question. Can these agreements cause some buyers to hesitate in committing to working with an agent?
I mean, it depends all how it's explained, because in a nutshell,
comes down to negotiations.
When is the last
Not negotiations, I think explanation and insight.
That's it. Because I'm honestly
knowledge.
Show me the data though. How many transactions have happened to where the buyer's actually going to pay the broker? It's really coming out of the seller. A lot of times the buyers
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
And in fact, that deal that I just did with the Fortress guy, I think we signed something. I don't even pay attention. I mean, I probably should be a little more on my game, where it's like when I make my offers, it's subject to me getting paid a commission. I don't even remember to do that, but the truth is that he signed something, and then when the deal sheet came out, he realized that I was getting like 25 basis points less, which I didn't even know. I was getting paid 2.75% instead of 2.5 or 3. Anyway, he was concerned about it, and I was like, "It's okay." You know what I mean? But it's one of those things that it's just more paperwork. And I did have one seller who said, "Let's just pay 1% to the buyer's broker." Do you know how many appointments we had?
I'm telling you,
Zero.
So I'm going to end the conversation, and I wish this can go on for another hour because these two are amazing. But Michael, give me your final thoughts on, then we'll ask Queasy. I started the show at the top of the show saying a lot of people think New York City is in crisis from a real estate perspective. All of these changes, the National Association of Realtor, the FAIR Act, et cetera, et cetera. Where do we go with all of this? Some might say, can we recuperate? Some might say we don't need to. We're just plugging along and doing our thing. Final thought. Overall observation.
Well, in the end, everybody needs a place to live, whether if it's buying or renting.
I agree.
Laws and things can change. Industries have evolved and changed in the way we do processes. But we all adjust and find a way. But I honestly think, I truly believe that this is a little bit of abrasive at first, figuring things out. But I honestly I think it puts emphasis in the value of having a great broker to educate you. And there's so many more questions and discussions now happening in the industry, even on a consumer perspective, where I think they're more motivated to talk to a real estate agent that going on Street Easy doesn't have all the answers.
I agree.
Now. And I can't find everything on Google. I'm finding misinformation. Yeah. I need to call a reputable agent. I need to walk in Brown Harris or Compass, and I need to find myself a good reputable agent. So I honestly think that it's going to circle back to where real estate agents now are going to have, I think, more of demand and more power than what they did before, just because it's just become more and more evident in how important it is to work with one.
I 100% agree with that. Weezy?
I've always, even in the darkest days, been so bullish on New York real estate and New York itself. Mm-hmm. It is one of the most extraordinary sort of melting pot of people and talent, and we are so resilient. And I can't imagine being anywhere else. And so, 100%. Again, whether you are a seller, a buyer, a renter, I think that I'm, by owning a piece or being a part of the rock of what New York City is going to be here much longer than I am.
Resilience. That's how we end the show. We're getting beep, so that means we're done.
It's time.
But we will be right back with my thoughts for the week, so don't go anywhere.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with my thoughts for this week. So, congestion pricing in New York City, initially designed to reduce traffic and fund police transit improvements, have faced mounting criticism and may not be working as intended. While the goal was to ease gridlock in Manhattan's Central Business District, many residents and business owners argue that the plan unfairly penalizes working-class commuters, out-of-borough drivers, and small businesses that rely on vehicle access. Meanwhile, traffic congestion has shifted to other areas, like the uptown neighborhoods, rather than decreasing it overall. With limited improvements to the transit system and mounting public backlash, critics are calling for the program to be reevaluated or delayed until more equitable solutions such as improved transit alternatives, exemptions for essential workers, and regional coordination are in place. As it stands, congestion pricing risks becoming a political liability rather than a transportation solution. I say get rid of it completely. Lower cost of transportation for all of us here in New York City. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Substack, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And John Wooten says, if you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over? Oh, and a note of thanks to all of you who listen and watch. This show has achieved a major milestone last week. We are now rated in the top 5% of all podcasts globally. Well, oh my God, it took me a day to absorb that. But look, thanks to all of you. Thanks to everyone who listens and supports the show for the last 11 years. I have no words. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am so grateful, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.